Contrary to the implications of the quasi-criminal detective war machine that Bill Gates, Joe Biden, and Penis Gabriel worked out with the help of friends of friends like Putin and his cohort at UW Dialectical, Sherman Alexie, Leda Kim, the people who call themselves in the loop of the basketball game, Spike Oldley, you met Spike Oldley, of Donald Trump's AIDS-related Two Virgins pussy ball game, an Axis revenge attack that included the help of black people who never trusted the United States anyway, and so on and so forth. You know, the hatred for the liberal American that led them to Trump on the floor of Kennedy's White House, and Trump over to Southeast Asia to prove that they were better than Martin Luther King and their loyalty to the flag. In other words, the Axis success in turning things around through internal hatred. Contrary to all that, it isn't really that difficult to prove that it's an alliance of both sides, a shrewd Green Party dialectical jab into our civics that has used viruses on our children and schools and grandmothers, pursuant to claiming that their Cold War fossil fuel abuse of power um, has things up their sleeve that will rescue us from the implications of scarcity, which redistributes by way of attempts to alleviate hunger the profit margins of the status quo. In other words, you know, drunk old engine outside the cigar shop, Sherman Alexie, pitches in with the hatred for America's moral values. While the Black Panthers fist in the air and kneeling on the field for the higher order of amended histories that come from the pens of, you know, worldly wise owls from the infinite beyond who perceive the ancestors in the Elders Project. In other words, it's a shrewd cloister of people who expect us to be lobotomized when they commit genocide. And they form a celebrity circuit, an inside in the loop know-how cult, who do things like Ryback showed me nuclear information from the federal system. So now anything that I report about adult pimps, pedophiles who tortured me as a child is considered information stolen from the trumpytune on high at current, you know, value, you know, where, when, what it's worth, you know, meaning Yoko Ono, the Axis representative of the takeover. I mean, you can see the Japanese outside the nuclear bunker, Dallas Police Department, when they killed JFK to get control of the nuclear bomb. And you can see it from, you know, their totemic worship of the disappearing mountain. Oh, the sacred mountain of America that points the way to Japan, where they're going to, the Namis who were jilted by America when coming home are going to create a nuclear furnace against abortion and so on. I mean, it's a mean hallucinatory thing that Putin and Brian Eno and Sinfield put together, claiming that they were representing the AIDS victims. So they get Michael Foucault's flock, the ultimate symbolic gratification of revenge on the wee-wees of the West who didn't want, to do it Oliver Stone's way in the prison system as, what they call a bot boy arrangement. And so they had laugh with Glavnicki at the queer bait with the neurotrauma. They dare the reader to speak up because it will just go back at you. That's what the Democratic Party had in mind for Nixon and Reagan when they put up McGovern. And he laughs, first thing out of his mouth, Democratic convention, is they should take a little more time before choosing their vice president. Anyone knows what went on later with Eagleton sees that the image that they're conjuring is everything you say turns around and goes back at you. So, it's the Russian mirror operation again that they think is oh so profound. The simple truth is, when it came to COVID, they said ease up in your contact social distancing so you don't get sick. That's perfectly clear during AIDS. It's perfectly clear that people should be advised. Instead, they followed script. That was what they said. The whole is greater than the sum of its part. The script is too pretty to throw away. The Texas school book, having read the book stuff, is too pretty to throw away. And what's referred to, the horses running to the burning barn. So you spoke the horses and they run into the burning barn. In sight of all of those gay people burned alive, it's too pretty to Yoko Ono to throw away. In other words, I'd rather see them burn because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And this is the Nazi espionage that the stupids in Seattle consider trying to discuss to warn people is embezzling a holy penny that they had to slash of Shannon Harps to rescue Paul McCartney from. And if you don't go get with it, you're going to have hand-to-hand combat over the children in your family. This is a nightmare from a very, very, very sick mind named Penis J. Sinfield, who shares not only his middle name, but leapfrog information with Putin. A very, very sick mind did this. And they say they're avenging Hiroshima with a pornography genocide system. Wait a minute. You stupids have to think clearly about this. Don't just sit there and say, we're going to stonewall it because stonewall is our poetry. It's the maniacal laughter. The pun craft that went into this comes from the master geniuses of pun craft. And they're the ones who are behind the whole thing. So, if you're going to drone on and on and on as sick and evil, I don't want to use the word peasants because it makes me sound like that asshole. If you're just going to drone on and on and on like this, I want you to live forever because they have me down by the, Van de Graaff Tower and they snuff out a bunch of kids with a gas. And Microsoft has a vat he's going to put your brain into so that you understand Greg Coral was trying to save you from hell. And God, this nightmare, comes from the mind of the psychotics and Nation of Islam, psychiatry, and so forth. But it's, something like that is justified from a one-night stand from a woman who had more status in the university than me, and she invited me to her house and lied about her social arrangements. That justified because I'm a white. It comes from a very, very sick mind, Mr. Biden. Okay? So when you tell me that you think that I should be kept in my place and not rewarded and that I should be forced to get with the program, you're talking on behalf of a very sick and criminal operation from a very sick and disturbed mind. So let me tell you what I think. In my opinion, you should get with it and stop forcing me as an elderly deaf man who has been tortured, not once, but repeatedly tortured and subject to mutilation. You should stop trying to force me into a devised role conceived and executed by the attackers. I have presented evidence that it was Hitler Reagan. That's all I've done. I haven't promulgated hallucinations about it. I'm not the one in Hollywood spin cripe. Sinfield is the one who's in Hollywood spin cripe. These are evil lopers stealing from. The reason they went after me was because I was vulnerable and part of American heritage. A part of American heritage that it was a little bit more difficult than some of the more ogreish things in American heritage to subject to hate, which apparently was one of these perverse arguments that made them all the more licky chops. The more innocent you are, the more we hate you. Stop with the rationalizations. Send in the National Guard and close UW if necessary.